I used to think my life was ordinary in the best way. I was a wife, a mother, and a woman who found peace in small things. The scent of pancakes on Saturday mornings, the giggles of our 3 children echoing through the hallways, the warmth of David's hand as we watched them play. David, my husband, was the kind of man people envied. He was attentive, quick to help with the kids, and always planning for our future. He traveled often for business overseas, but he made up for his absences with grand gestures, gifts for the kids, flowers for me, promises that all his hard work was for us. When he was home, he made every day feel special. Movie nights in the living room with the kids sprawled across us. Family walks to the park. Surprise takeout on busy evenings. I would watch him throw our youngest in the air, catching her safely every time, and think, I am lucky. Yet, there were small cracks I chose not to see. David was often on his phone, stepping outside to take calls in hushed tones. If I asked who it was, he'd smile and say, just work, love. Sometimes I would see large sums withdrawn from our joint account, marked as investment transfers. I would ask him if we were okay financially, and he would pull me close, kissing my forehead with a reassuring, everything I do is for you and the kids. I believed him. I had to. He was my husband, the father of my children, and the man I had built my world around. And in our warm kitchen, with the smell of dinner in the air and the children's laughter in the background, I had no idea that everything I loved was about to be stolen from me. David's business trips were a normal part of our lives, or so I convinced myself. He would leave for weeks at a time, always to the same country. Before each trip, he would kiss me softly, look into my eyes, and say, I hate leaving you and the kids, but this is how I secure our future. He would promise to call every night, and he often did, but the calls were rushed. The background was always quiet, almost too quiet, and he would never video call, claiming the Wi-Fi was bad where he stayed. When I asked what exactly he was working on, he would brush it off with a tight-lipped smile. You wouldn't understand the paperwork and negotiations, love. I tried not to pry. After all, he always came back with stories about big deals, and how one day we would be able to buy a bigger house, travel anywhere we wanted, and send the kids to the best schools without worry. But sometimes I would catch him staring off while we were talking, his eyes distant, and I would wonder if the stress was getting to him. He would shake it off, ruffle our son's hair, and change the subject. The children missed him deeply during these trips. They would draw pictures for him, counting down the days on the calendar until Daddy comes home. When he returned, he would scoop them into his arms, and they would squeal in laughter, their tiny arms wrapped around his neck, as if he could never leave again. He never missed a birthday, never forgot an anniversary, and each homecoming felt like a celebration. But as his trips grew longer and the gaps between them shorter, I started to feel uneasy. The money leaving our joint account increased, always followed by vague explanations and quick kisses to distract me. At night, when the kids were asleep, I would lie in bed, scrolling through photos of our family, whispering prayers of gratitude, trying to silence the small, persistent fear that something was shifting beneath the surface of our perfect little world. And all the while, I had no idea that with every trip David took, he was weaving a web that would one day strangle the very family he claimed to love. It started with small amounts, a few $100s here, 1,000 there, each labeled investment transfer in our joint account. David told me he was buying into a real estate deal overseas, saying, once it matures, we'll be set for life. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. We had 3 kids, bills to pay, dreams to fulfill, and I didn't want to be the wife who doubted her husband's ambitions. But the amounts grew larger, and the transfers became more frequent. Sometimes they happened while he was away, and sometimes even while he was home, stepping outside to take calls before making a transaction. I remember the day I finally confronted him. We were sitting on the couch after dinner, the kids playing with their toys on the carpet. I took a deep breath and said, David, I've noticed the money leaving our account. I'm getting worried. He looked at me, his expression unreadable for a moment before he softened, reaching out to take my hand. You don't have to worry about it, love. This is all part of the plan. You'll see. He kissed my forehead, just like he always did, and the conversation ended there. I wanted to push further, to ask exactly what the plan was, but the fear of upsetting him or making him feel like I didn't trust him stopped me. I tried to tell myself it was normal, that he was providing, that I should be grateful for his hard work. After all, he was a good father, a present husband when he was home, and the children adored him. But at night, when I couldn't sleep, I would check the bank app, watching the balance drop lower than I was comfortable with, my stomach twisting with a quiet dread I couldn't name. Sometimes, in the middle of folding laundry or cooking dinner, a thought would flash through my mind. What if he's hiding something? I would shake it off, focusing on the laughter of the kids, the warmth of our home, and the soft hum of the life we had built together. But deep down, I was beginning to sense that the life I was protecting so fiercely was not as secure as I believed. It was a Wednesday. I woke before dawn to the sound of rain tapping gently against the window. I stretched my arm across the bed, expecting to feel David's warmth, but the space was empty and cold. I assumed he was already up for work, perhaps downstairs making coffee. The house was too quiet. I walked to the children's rooms, expecting to see their sleepy faces as they shuffled out for breakfast. But their beds were empty, the covers neatly folded back as if no one had ever slept there. At first, I thought maybe David had taken them out for an early breakfast as a surprise. It wasn't unusual for him to do small gestures like that, to create memories with the kids while giving me a morning to rest. But when I checked the driveway, the car was gone. I called his phone immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again and again, pacing the kitchen, my mind spiraling as the rain outside turned from a gentle tap to a steady downpour. I called the school to see if he had dropped them off early, but they hadn't arrived. The silence in the house was deafening. Toys remained scattered in the living room, little shoes by the door, a half-finished drawing on the dining table with "I love you, Mommy" scribbled in crayon. The world began to tilt. I called his family, his friends, anyone who might know where he went. But no one had heard from him. Some said maybe he just needed a break, while others told me not to worry, that he was probably planning something special. But I knew something was wrong. I called the police, my voice shaking as I tried to explain that my husband and children were missing, that they had vanished without a trace. The officer on the other end tried to calm me, telling me to wait 24 hours, that maybe they would return. But I knew they wouldn't. As the day turned into night, I sat in the children's room, clutching their clothes, breathing in their scent, rocking back and forth as the reality sank in. My husband had taken our children, and I had no idea where they were, or if I would ever see them again. 3 days passed. 3 days of pacing the house in the same clothes, of unanswered calls, of neighbors dropping off food I couldn't eat, of sleepless nights listening for footsteps that never came. I memorized every sound in that empty house: the ticking of the kitchen clock, the hum of the fridge, the creak of the hallway floorboards. When I walked past the children's empty rooms, on the third night, my phone finally rang. I fumbled to answer, my heart pounding as I saw his name flash across the screen. "David? Where are you? Where are the kids? Are they okay?" There was a pause on the other end before he spoke, his voice calm, almost bored. "They're fine." I burst into tears, clutching the phone so tightly it hurt. "Please, David, please bring them home. The kids need to be home. I need them home." His voice was cold. "You don't understand. This is for the best." "For the best?" I screamed, unable to keep the panic from my voice. "How is this for the best? They need me. They need their mother." There was silence, the kind that stretches on forever, before he spoke again. "They're safe. That's all you need to know. Take the money in the joint account and move on with your life." I choked on a sob, collapsing to the floor. The phone pressed against my ear as if I could pull him and the children back through it. "David, please. I'm begging you. Don't do this." But he had already hung up. The call log mocked me. Call ended. 2 minutes 47 seconds, as if the life I had known, the family I had built, had been reduced to less than 3 minutes of cold final words. That night, I lay on the living room floor clutching the children's pajamas to my chest, my tears soaking the fabric as the rain outside pounded against the windows like the beating of a heart that was now broken beyond repair. And for the first time, I allowed the terrifying thought to fully form in my mind. What if they never come back? The morning after the call, I woke up on the living room floor, my face stiff with dried tears. The house was still empty, cold, and silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the chirping birds outside. Oblivious to the storm in my chest, I refused to accept David's words as final. I went to the police again, demanding they do something. Show me the footage from the airport, track his passport. They filed a report, but I could see it in their eyes they didn't think it was urgent. A father taking his kids was an abduction to them, even if it was without consent, even if it shattered the mother left behind. I called every friend, every family member, everyone who might know where he had gone. Each time I explained, I felt like I was telling a story about someone else's life, someone else's nightmare. He just needs time. Maybe he's trying to clear his head. He would never do something like that. But he had. I found a private investigator and used what was left in my savings to pay the retainer. Even though David had left a large sum in the joint account, I couldn't touch that money, not yet. It felt tainted, like hush money for my silence. The investigator was kind but direct. I'll do what I can, but if he's left the country, it could take time. Time felt like my enemy. I searched through his drawers, his files, anything he left behind for a clue. I found flight tickets for previous trips, always to the same country, but with no return dates marked. I found receipts, foreign currency, and a second phone I didn't know he had, but it was wiped clean. At night, I sat in the children's rooms, holding their blankets to my face, whispering prayers they would hear me somehow, wherever they were. Mommy loves you. Mommy is coming for you. Mommy will never stop looking. But the house remained silent, each echo a reminder that I was alone. And deep inside, a question began to form, like a shadow I didn't want to see. What if David had been planning this for a long time? Days turned into weeks. The private investigator sent updates, each one a painful reminder of how much I didn't know about the man I had married. He confirmed David had left the country with our 3 children, but there was no record of return flights, no digital trail, no forwarding address. He was careful, the investigator told me, his voice low, almost apologetic. Too careful. I tried to piece together every moment, every trip David had taken, every late-night call I had ignored, every vague explanation I had accepted because I trusted him. Each memory now felt like a betrayal, each smile hiding secrets I was only now starting to see. I found emails I had never seen before, hidden under folders on our shared laptop. Conversations with real estate agents in a country I had never visited, documents signed in languages I couldn't read. I saw transfers to foreign banks, not for investments, but for living expenses, rent, utilities. It hit me like a punch to the chest. David wasn't just working there, he was living there. Every moment I spent alone, raising our children while he was working. He was living a separate life I had no part in. He had prepared for this, slowly draining our funds, building another home in another country while I remained blind in the home we shared. One night, unable to sleep, I logged into our joint account and stared at the balance. It was full, almost mocking me, a silent bribe to stay quiet, to accept what had happened and move on. But how could I move on when every part of me was screaming for my children, when I could still hear their laughter, their footsteps, their sleepy voices calling mommy in the middle of the night? The investigator sent me a final message. He's closed every traceable account. Unless he wants to be found, it will be difficult. The room spun as I read it over and over, clutching the phone in trembling hands. And in that moment, the last pieces of hope I had clung to shattered, replaced by a dark, sinking realization. David was never coming back, and he had taken everything that mattered with him. It happened on an ordinary morning. I was scrolling through old photos of the kids, clutching my phone like a lifeline, when the private investigator's number popped up. I answered immediately, my voice barely a whisper. Did you find them? Please, tell me you found them. There was a pause before he spoke. I found something. You need to prepare yourself. I could barely breathe as he continued. David didn't just have another life in that country, he had another wife. They had been married for years, long before he met me. She lived in a modest home in a quiet neighborhood, waiting for him during his business trips back here. Trips that were just visits to us. She had no children of her own. She couldn't have any. And now, David had taken our 3 children to her, presenting them as hers, completing the family she could never have, fulfilling a promise to her while ripping apart the life he built with me. The investigator sent me a photo. My hands shook violently as I opened it, bile rising in my throat. There they were, my babies standing next to David, who had his arm around a woman I had never seen before. She was smiling, looking down at my children as if they were hers. as if she had the right. My daughter was wearing a new dress, holding the woman's hand. My sons stood on either side of David, their smiles small, their eyes distant, as if they didn't understand why they were there. And in that moment, something inside me broke. All the late nights, the dinners waiting to be eaten, the prayers whispered over their sleeping forms, the scraped knees I had kissed, the fevers I had stayed up nursing, all of it. All of me, stolen and handed over to a woman who didn't know their middle names, who didn't know which of them hated broccoli, who didn't know the song I sang to them before bed. David had chosen her. He had taken our children and given them to a woman who could not bear her own, telling her our children were hers to keep. I screamed, a raw animal sound, as the photo slipped from my hand. I collapsed to the floor, clutching my chest, unable to breathe, unable to think, unable to understand how the men I loved could betray me so completely. And as the walls closed in, one horrifying thought circled in my mind like a vulture. This was his plan all along. I don't know how long I lay on the floor that day, the photo staring up at me from where it had fallen. The faces of my children burned into my mind in a way that felt like a wound. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I couldn't move. Then, late that night, my phone rang. It was an international number. I knew it was him. I answered, my voice raw. David, please, please, bring them home. There was silence on the other end before his calm, familiar voice spoke. They are home. I froze, the words sinking in like ice. What do you mean? I whispered. She deserves to be a mother, he said, as if he was explaining something logical, something fair. She can't have children, and I promised her a family. Now she has one. A sob escaped me, my vision blurring as tears fell. They're my children, David. Mine. How could you do this to them? To me. His voice remained cold, detached. You're strong. You'll be fine. Take the money in the account and move on. Move on? I screamed. You stole my children. You kidnapped them, David. They need their mother. They need me. He sighed, the sound infuriatingly casual. Don't make this harder than it has to be. You can't reach us. And it's better this way. They'll have a better life here. And you'll have your freedom. Freedom? I choked out. Freedom? You've destroyed me. But he didn't respond. Instead, he said one final thing before the call ended. Goodbye. The line went dead. I sat there, clutching the phone to my ear long after the call ended, listening to the emptiness, trying to process the finality of it all. The man I loved, the father of my children, had chosen another woman, another life, and had the audacity to tell me to take blood, money in exchange for forgetting the children I had carried, birthed and raised. That night, I screamed into the empty house until my voice was gone. And when I finally stopped, the silence felt heavier than ever, pressing against my chest, reminding me of the one thing I couldn't deny. They were gone, and he had no intention of bringing them back. Days turned into weeks. People said, you're strong. You'll get through this. They brought casseroles I couldn't eat and offered prayers that fell flat in the air. They told me to take the money and start fresh, as if a full bank account could fill the empty rooms, echoing with the laughter of children who were no longer there. Every morning, I woke up reaching for them, forgetting for a split second that they were gone. I would walk past their rooms and pause, waiting to hear them fighting over toys or calling for breakfast. But there was nothing, just the heavy, suffocating silence of a house that was once a home. At night, I lay awake, clutching their clothes, whispering their names into the darkness, praying they would somehow feel me, know that I hadn't left them, that I hadn't given up on them. Because I hadn't. David thought he had won, that he could erase me from their lives with money and distance. But he didn't understand that a mother's love doesn't end with distance, or silence, or betrayal. The world around me moved on, but I couldn't. I refused to. Every day, I wrote them letters they would never see, telling them stories of our life together, of the days I held them close, of the love that wrapped around them every day of their lives. I started to save every penny I could, working quietly, gathering resources, refusing to touch the money David left in the account. That was his money, tainted with betrayal. I would build my own way, my own war chest, for the day I would fight to bring my children home. And until that day came, I would live, I would survive, because they needed me to. One day, they would be old enough to ask questions, to wonder, to search, and when they did, I would be here, waiting with open arms, ready to tell them the truth. That I never stopped loving them. That I never stopped fighting for them. That they were never forgotten. Not for a single breath. Not for a single heartbeat. And so, in the silence that remains, I live with hope, holding on to the promise I made to myself as I stood in the ruins of my motherhood. This is not the end, because one day, they will know who their mother is. And when that day comes, I will be ready.